It is now day 3 of a federal government shutdown. While the U.S. House passed a continuing resolution to fund the government well into November, the U.S. Senate has not been able to get to 60 votes to approve it. The impasse appears to be over whether to extend expiring tax credits that make health insurance cheaper for millions of Americans. Senate Democrats want the extension. Senate Republicans say it's too expensive. Republican Congressman Dan Crenshaw represents Texas' 2nd Congressional District, which includes the Woodlands, Atascocita, and other parts of northern and northeastern Greater Houston. He joins us now. Congressman, good morning.
Morning. How you doing?
All right. How are you, sir?
Good, thanks.
What's your position, first of all, on these tax credits? Should they be allowed to expire?
Well, we're talking about something that has nothing to do with the shutdown, first of all. So let's just make that really clear. Because, Democrats have done a good job of getting you and the media to conflate these two issues. Extending the tax credits is a really complicated policy matter by itself. This was done during COVID, not with Republican support, by the way, but it was done during COVID in an effort to help people out who had all just lost their jobs. This is people who are not below the poverty line. This is people who are, well above 500% of the poverty line. You say it'll decrease premiums if we keep them, but CBO disagrees with you. Only 8% of the premium increase that we're expecting is due to the lapsing of these tax credits. So let's just be really clear about what these tax credits are and what they have to do with the shutdown, which is nothing. So all of a sudden, Democrats pulled out of a hat some random policy issue that they believe in. Okay, fair enough. It's debatable. We can debate it. But it shouldn't have anything to do whether or not your government functions. So they decided to shut down the government over this, and we offered them a clean CR. Hell, it's not even clean. It's actually there's actually a lot of things in that CR, like dish cuts, for instance. We'd make sure those don't happen. Dish is disproportionate share hospitals, which is hospitals such as LBJ here in Houston, our Harris Health System. So Democrats are against those kind of things. They're against community health programs. That's also in the CR, making sure those don't go away. Extensions for telehealth and reimbursements. That's also something we make sure don't go away. Democrats are apparently against all of that. Talk about national flood insurance. You can't apply for any national flood insurance right now in the midst of hurricane season. That goes away because of the government shutdown. So let's be really clear about what policies are actually do have to do with the shutdown and which ones don't.
The suggestion has been made that the solution is approval of the continuing resolution as is, and then a separate up or down vote on the healthcare tax credits. Would you support doing that?
Oh, of course. Look, the whole point of a CR is to say, hey, guys, look, we never get to our appropriations on time because it's complicated and we disagree and we need 60 votes in the Senate. So this is the really issue about this entire thing that's, I think, should irk people. The Democrats immediately try to spin this as a Republican shutdown, okay, forgetting that on September 19th, we as Republicans in the House passed that clean CR, a 7-week temporary stopgap funding bill that just keeps things open, right? So we can keep negotiating appropriations, by the way, and you could add those tax credits into that or not. I don't even think you should. I think that is very much a separate issue. It's a complex, separate issue. It was meant for a temporary emergency. They were never meant to be permanent. If you make them permanent, you're talking about almost $500 billion in costs over the next 10 years. Insurance premiums are not going up because the government isn't subsidizing them enough. They're going up because the government subsidizes insurance companies over patients. That's what Obamacare is fundamentally. So to answer your question simply, yes, I'd support that, an up or down vote on those two things. But you need to keep the government open. You can't hold the entire federal government hostage and all the services that we provide hostage because you're throwing a tantrum over an unrelated policy issue. The Democrats are going to lose this messaging war. I don't know what they think they're doing. This wasn't well thought out. They pulled this out of a hat at the last minute. It's not like they've been talking about this for a long time.
It seems, and again, I'm not going to try and put words in either party's mouth here, but it does seem like the argument has to do at least a little bit with timing, in that open enrollment for the Affordable Care Act marketplace begins on November 1st. Of course, these are due to expire at the end of this year. And the question that's been raised is whether or not there would be enough time for, once CR was approved, an additional up and down vote then, or addressing, as you say, what is a complicated request.
Yeah, I mean, if that's their argument, then all the more reason not to shut down the government. Because all they've done is taken the focus completely off of the policy issue they claim they care about. And it's not a very good policy issue for reasons I've just explained. But if that's what they care about, then why would you put all the focus on the shutdown now? So their tactics have been really terrible. This was not well thought out at all. And they're going to end up caving. They're going to have to cave. Shutdowns are historically very unpopular.
Yeah, well,
And they own this one.
remind me, were you in office during the last one 5 years ago, or was that just prior to you? No, you were on board for
The really there's been a shutdown
been a
almost every
couple.
time. Right?
Yeah,
I'm like
right.
they're usually for like a day or two.
Well, I was
Again,
thinking
like I said,
yeah,
a lot of this is very normal.
yeah.
So it's very normal to have this brinksmanship, and we don't lose a lot of sleep over it, but we usually get it resolved pretty quickly. The really long one you're talking about, no, I was coming into office
Okay.
during that.
Is there a way to do this that would guarantee that a vote would take place in both houses, both on the continuing resolution and then also on before Affordable Care Act open enrollment begins on November 1st? Is there a way that you could, I'm not saying you, but that Republicans could say that to Democrats, that Democrats would trust?
It's a long. We could have an hour-long conversation playing that game out. No, I mean, look, they need to be talking. But Democrats didn't give us enough time. And by the way, Republicans have come out and said many times, Republican leadership has come out and said many times, we will talk to you about this, but like, but you can't hold the government hostage over it. It is an unrelated issue to even budgeting. So like it's of course it's possible. I'm just not exactly sure I see what path is there to take. I think Schumer feels he needs to play to his base. Remember, he's got a primary from AOC right now. So I mean, it sounds kind of funny, but it is true in New York that, he probably feels that, and he feels like he has to stand up to Trump and Republicans. And oftentimes playing chicken with a shutdown is the way to do it. Unfortunately, the people who pay are, folks in the military, let's say, who, okay, well, they'll get reimbursed in back pay. Yeah, that's true. But, a lot of these lower enlisted folks, they live paycheck to paycheck. And that's true for a lot of federal workers. So it's not good. It's not good optics for them. I don't know why they're doing it.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. We're talking with Houston area Republican Congressman Dan Crenshaw. He represents the Texas 2nd Congressional District, and we're discussing the federal government shutdown. You can join our conversation. Call or text 713-440-8870. Email talk@houstonmatters.org. You can also comment on our video stream on Houston Public Media's YouTube channel. And we have a comment there on YouTube from Herlind, who writes, please, Representative Crenshaw, explain to us that there is a law existing that states if the budget deficit is too large, Medicare will be cut. Can you speak to that?
Okay, so what happens when Medicare or Social Security, they operate off of a trust fund. Like when you go to your taxes, you pay a tax called a FICA tax. That's on your federal tax bill. Those are the taxes that go into that trust fund. And when that trust fund runs out of money in about 2033, so you got some time, but it's about 2033. Yes, by law, all benefits automatically get cut. That's what happens. It's not because it's either you raise everybody's taxes really quickly or you automatically cut benefits. But by law, the benefits do get cut. But that's what happens in 2033 when the trust fund runs out. So it has nothing to do with deficits. It has everything to do with that particular trust fund and the solvency of it.
White House Budget Chief Russ Vought and other Trump administration officials have said they view this shutdown as an opportunity to shrink the size of the federal government in line with their agenda. Do you have any sense of which agencies or programs could be affected, not just temporarily, but potentially permanently?
We had a call with Russell Vought on that exact topic, and they're not going to do anything that I think is too extreme at all. I think they're going to be, if they do anything permanent, it's going to be very cautious and very much in line with what they already had planned. So I would not know. I would not expect this massive layoff of federal workers. We don't see that as a way to win against the Democrats. You know, it may annoy them, but in the end, they're not doing it for that reason. So I wouldn't expect anything extreme on that end.
You posted on social media, quote, Democrats shut down the government because they care more about illegals than Americans. Are you saying, in your view, this is really about immigration and not about health care?
No, it's healthcare for illegal immigrants. So the reason we say that is because in their proposal, in their counter proposal, they had about $1.4 trillion in demands. Okay, part of it is those healthcare tax extension credits, and the other is just repealing everything we did in the Working Families Tax Cut Act. Okay, so where we said very specifically and made it more clear in law that a state cannot use loopholes to use federal funding to put into its Medicaid system to then cover illegals. California does this, for instance. I believe Minnesota does this. Every presidential candidate in the primary running in the last election said that they would fund healthcare for illegals. So we're not crazy for believing this is what they want to do. So we made sure in law that was more clear that you could not do that in the last bill that we passed and made into law. They want to repeal that. That's why we say, look, what you're really doing is trying to cover illegal immigrants with taxpayer funded welfare healthcare. I mean, that's effectively what you're doing and why we make that argument.
Let's say, as these, we know there are going to be more votes in the Senate today, but let's say today and into next week and the week after, we don't see this, as you suggested, that the Democrats will, in your view, ultimately cave. If they don't, what is the path towards some sort of compromise? Is there compromise to be made?
There's always some kind of compromise to be made. It's hard to see what that is right now. I'm not sure the Democrats are not having substantive talks with us. But I think there's enough members in the Senate, Democrat members in the Senate, that are becoming increasingly uncomfortable with the optics here. They know, right? I mean, if you're from a state like Georgia or Arizona, Michigan, they know. They know that the optics aren't good for Democrats. You know, you can get away with this if you're from New York and there's just, there's so few Republicans and independents left that they don't care, or California, but you can't get away with it in a purple swing state. So I think they're going to become increasingly uncomfortable. And as we put more votes up, I think you'll eventually get 60.
In a case like this, where it really is coming down to a question of getting 60 votes in the Senate and the House has already passed its bill, is this one of those circumstances where you and your colleagues on both sides of the aisle kind of shrug your shoulders and say, well, we did our part. There's really nothing much for us to do, but just kind of watch?
Yeah. After we've passed it out of the House, yes, I mean that is basically true. It's that the job is now in the Senate. It's our job to message out the truth, to talk to folks like you and get and answer questions and tell people the truth about what's going on, because there's a lot of spin out there. But no, I mean there's no more work for us to do in the House. The Senate has different rules. And and people don't understand that oftentimes, right? This was one of the arguments Democrats are really trying to make right now. Oh well, it's obviously Republicans' fault because they have the Senate, the House, and the presidency. Well, like they're acting like they never took a civics class. Maybe they haven't ever taken a civics class. They know you need 60 votes in the Senate, which is a rule in the Senate. It's not in the Constitution. It's just a rule in the Senate that has a long tradition, and it's a good tradition. It forces compromise. But it also forcing of compromise also creates situations like this.
Let's take a call. We have Earl on the line from Spring. Earl, what's your question for Congressman Crenshaw?
Yes. Talking about Medicare, not Social Security, but for Medicare. If the budget is so that the deficit goes up by a certain amount, will not Medicare be cut automatically over a period of time?
Yeah, same question as before. The answer is no. The Medicare benefits cut automatically when the trust fund runs insolvent, which is projected to be 2033. And the reason that's going insolvent is because, well, we have an aging population. When Medicare started, our life expectancy was somewhere in the low 60s. So it was actually below retirement age. Now life expectancy is almost 80 years old. We barely raised the retirement age 2 years. You have a lot less workers paying into the system than you used to when it first started. So it's completely a demographics issue, and it has nothing to do with the deficit. It doesn't matter what the deficit is or the debt. I mean, there's debt and there's deficits, two different things. Nothing to do with that at all. It's the trust fund that it operates out of going insolvent in 2033.
Let's see if we can get one more question in. Marcy's in Spring. Marcy, what's your question for Congressman Crenshaw?
Hi, Congressman Crenshaw. You give out awards every year because your mother had cancer, and you give out awards for like innovation in research, medical research. But this administration is cutting off all of this research. And people in Texas, for example, we have $3 billion. We're going to vote on this proposition to take $3 billion out of our general fund to give toward dementia research and Alzheimer's. Aren't you concerned about that? I mean, is every state going to have to do their own research now? I would think your mother would not approve, and I think you approved this.
I'll stop you right there. Don't bring my mother into this. I'll stop you right there. I'm happy to answer your question about NIH, but do not ever tell me what my dead mother that I lost to cancer when I was 10 years old would approve or not approve of. So be respectful. Okay. Yes, I do give out an award every year with my mother's name on it for healthcare innovation. And we're unclear on what the actual cuts to NIH are. First of all, the government can't, the executive branch can't just cut NIH. What they can cut are certain programs that they deem are duplicative or unnecessary. And there's a lot of those out there. In the end, Congress is what appropriates NIH, and there's a very good chance that NIH will be appropriated at the very similar levels that it has been in the past, because most of us are in favor of that. So I would not worry too much about NIH and a lot of the cuts you've been hearing about. And we've asked for Jay Bhattacharya, who's been on my podcast, to come on and give us a little bit more detail on what's really being cut and what isn't, because there's what Democrats' spin is about what's being cut, and they'll say it's the things we need the most, like cancer research and all this, and then you find out that's not really true. But what's happened, what I think the truest thing you could say is that a lot of it's been put on pause and is under review. But to say it's been cut is not accurate because they can't cut it. But a lot has been paused and on review, and it is concerning. But it's part of this. It's yet another reason we need to appropriate and open up the government so we can actually start those negotiations and get actual appropriations bills done.
Republican Congressman Dan Crenshaw represents Texas' 2nd Congressional District. Congressman Crenshaw, thank you very much for the time.
Thanks.